There's a moment that happens in thousands of homes every morning. Someone sits at their kitchen table, opens their banking app, and stares at the numbers longer than they used to. They're not broke. Not yet. But the gap between what comes in and what goes out is closing. And they're starting to notice how quiet that feeling is. For decades, the deal was simple. You go to school. You get a degree. You find stable work. You buy a house. You save a little. You retire eventually. It wasn't glamorous, but it was predictable. The middle class wasn't built on wealth. It was built on security. The belief that if you followed the steps, you'd be okay. Not rich. Just okay. That belief held families together. It shaped entire cities. It gave people permission to plan 5, 10, 20 years ahead. Parents told their kids, work hard, stay out of trouble, and you'll have more than we did. And for a while that was true. But somewhere along the way, the math stopped adding up. And most people didn't notice right away. Because the collapse of the middle class doesn't announce itself. It arrives slowly, one bill at a time. The cost of rent went up. Not dramatically, just consistently. 100 more this year. Another 100 the next. Groceries started feeling expensive in ways they hadn't before. Not luxury items. Eggs, bread, chicken. Health insurance premiums climbed. Deductibles doubled. A single emergency room visit could wipe out months of careful saving. Student loans that were supposed to be temporary became permanent fixtures. Payments that were meant to end in 10 years stretched into 20. And wages? Wages moved like old machinery. Slow. Stiff. Barely keeping pace with inflation, let alone the rising cost of everything else. The jobs that used to guarantee stability started offering less of it. Contracts instead of salaries. Gig work instead of benefits. Layoffs disguised as restructuring. People who did everything right, who earned degrees, who stayed employed, who never missed a payment, started realizing they were falling behind anyway. Not because they failed, but because the system that promised security had quietly rewritten the terms. And here's the part that makes it worse. Nobody talks about it. Not at work. Not at family dinners. Not with friends. Because admitting you're struggling feels like admitting you're failing. So people stay quiet. They skip doctor's appointments. They put off car repairs. They say no to things they used to say yes to. And they hope no one notices. There's a kind of stress that doesn't show up in emergency rooms. It sits in your chest at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep. It shows up when you're deciding between fixing your car or paying rent on time. It lives in the moment when your kid asks for something small and you have to calculate whether you can afford it. The middle class isn't just disappearing financially. It's disappearing emotionally. People who used to feel secure now feel precarious. Parents who used to plan for their children's futures now just try to make it through the month. Retirement, which used to feel like a distant inevitability, now feels like a luxury. Savings accounts that were supposed to grow just sit there barely moving, sometimes shrinking when an emergency hits. And the dignity that came with stability? That goes too. Because when you can't afford to live the life you were told you'd have, not because you're reckless, but because the system shifted beneath you, you start questioning everything. Your choices. Your worth. Your future. You start wondering if you missed something. If you should have done things differently. Even though deep down, you know the game changed. Not you. So people adapt. Not because they want to. Because they have to. They take second jobs. They drive for rideshare apps after their day shift ends. They sell things they used to keep. They move out of cities they grew up in because rent became impossible. They delay having children. They move back in with parents. They give up on buying homes altogether. Some go back to school, hoping another degree will help. Others leave industries entirely, chasing something more stable, even if it pays less. The adaptations aren't victories. They're survival strategies. And the people making them aren't naive. They know what they've lost. The middle class used to be the place where you could exhale, where you didn't have to worry every single day, where you could think about next year instead of next week. Now, it's the place people are trying desperately not to fall out of. And for millions, that fight is already over. They've crossed into a space where stability isn't coming back, where the best they can hope for is to keep the ground from disappearing completely. The middle class isn't disappearing because of one catastrophic event. It's disappearing because of 1,000 small ones. A rent increase here. A medical bill there. A job that used to be stable suddenly isn't. Each one on its own feels manageable. But together they create a reality where doing everything right still isn't enough. where the security people were promised is quietly, steadily slipping away. And the worst part, most people living through this still believe it's temporary. That if they just work a little harder, save a little more, hold on a little longer, things will go back to the way they were supposed to be. But what if they don't?